Morning, folks. How's everybody doing? I'm Carter Hammond, host of Locally Sourced. Today is going to be a pretty brief stream. Normally I would be doing this with Jonah, but he's a little busy this morning, and I didn't want people to have nothing. So figured I'd hop on and just kind of go over some of what's happening right now. Things I think are probably going to be relevant, for whatever that's worth. Really quick, I've been forgetting to do this lately, but if you can just follow us on Twitter, subscribe on Patreon, where you can support this channel, support Left Media in New Hampshire. This is like, it's gonna be super important for us to have some kind of centralized location where we can refer to materials to help people understand what's happening in this state, if we want to actually get what I would consider to be a real left agenda out there. So it's going to be super important for us to have these resources, and in order to do that, it takes time and it takes energy. It'd be great if Jonah and I could sink more time into doing this. So support us. It helps. Also, become a subscriber on YouTube. Hit the little bell for notifications so you'll get a heads up every single time we go live. Hitting subscribe is not enough. You got to hit the bell. That's how that works. Anywho, all right. Let's get into it a little bit. Excuse me. So, let's just be real about the fact that the left has zero power right now. That's just it's just kind of the brutal reality of it. At this moment, there's the whole process of jockeying for who's going to be majority and minority speakers, minority leader. So, yeah, to be expected, there's probably a number of people that are going to try and jump out here right now and say that they're right for the cause. Now, here's what I'll say. I don't have the knowledge of each of these people individually and their particular involvement. So in the next couple weeks, something that we'll do is I'll have other guests on, and Jonah and I will have other guests on to help us sort of suss out what's good with this, because I have my beliefs, but I don't necessarily know all the tools. So it's like, I want the audience to understand that I will be learning with you. That's kind of the whole point of this. That in a lot of ways, this show isn't me just knowing everything and telling people what they should be doing. It's a process of exploring knowledge. So there's a lot of stuff that I think Jonah and I are really hoping to learn and uncover, and inform ourselves on our political continuums as we're trying to better articulate what we believe, what we think, what we should see happen. So that's going to be the gist of what happens moving down the line. But right now, I'd rather be skeptical of everybody than just be giving everybody the I guess this is not the time to be giving any Democrat, and I do mean any Democrat, the benefit of the doubt. Because what we're talking about, in the state, in New Hampshire, we're talking about a party that's really not really ever had much control until recently. And Ray Buckley thinks that that the recent successes are attributable to cohesive democratic strategy. Well, okay, look, like, yeah, you could say that the Democrats are better organized now than they used to be in, say, like the 1970s, but let's be totally honest about the fact that we've discussed this type of logic on the channel before, where you don't just get to historicize everything and use that as a way to dismiss any kind of responsibility that you might have for your inability to gain any ground in the current political climate. Now, look, gerrymandering is real. Gerrymandering is super real, and it's about to get more real. It's about to get way worse, because they, like, especially after what just happened, they're going to be damn sure to redraw all those districts to secure their majority even further, which means the percentage of the vote that the Democrats are going to need to get throughout the state in order to get any kind of power back. It's you have to have a even bigger majority now. And the problem with that also is that this past election showed us that there is an incredible, like, center conservative, like, ticket splitter voter constituency. There's so many of those folks in the state that I think it's time for the left to deeply reassess the type of messaging we do. At this moment, I would go back and refer to the interview that I did with Isaac Grimm from Rights and Democracy, and hope this is stuff that I really want to dive into further on the channel going down the line. But at one point, he talked about doing like deep canvassing, where Rad would have people that were making dedicated calls to actual Trump supporters, people they knew were very far away from them, and they're trying to move them back in that spectrum of support. So I think there's, and I'm curious to see where Rad is at in the next, I know that they have a strategy session they're doing next Thursday, so we'll probably do another stream ahead of that, and then I would definitely encourage people to go and check that out, because that's probably going to be useful. So it's that kind of understanding that we on the left need to find a way to create a connection with the right that subverts the traditional democratic third way of getting to consensus on projects. Sorry, my dog's gonna whine. Anywho, here's what I'm gonna do. Right now, what I wanted to, there's sort of we've got like a 9-minute clip, and I'll just let the whole thing play out, because I do feel that we can talk about it afterwards. But this is a segment from Morning Edition, and you got Rick Ganley talking to Josh Rogers. This is on NHPR, so we're gonna have a listen right now.
This is Morning Edition on NHPR. I'm Rick Ganley. Well, Democrats won every federal race on the New Hampshire ballot last week. Republicans were the big winners on the state level. That includes gaining some new majorities in the State House of Representatives, State Senate, and the Executive Council. And that's led to some soul-searching and finger-pointing within the state Democratic Party in recent days about what went wrong and how to address it looking forward. NHPR's senior political reporter Josh Rogers has been talking with Democrats about this and joins us now. Hey, Josh.
Good morning, Rick.
So remind us where things stand in the State House after last week.
Well, we can start with the Executive Council. Heading into Election Day, Democrats held a 3-2 majority, which over the last year has really been important for them in terms of checking Governor Chris Sununu, limiting his ability to appoint top state officials. And also limiting his administration when it came to handing out state contracts and spending, what is literally billions of state dollars. But now the council, barring changes from any recounts, looks like it's going to be a 4-1 Republican majority. If you want to move to the state Senate, that was 14-10 Democratic majority. It's flipped to a 14-10 Republican majority. And, some of these races are undergoing recounts, but it's not an exaggeration to say that a 4-seat Republican cushion gives Sununu significant muscle when it comes to getting his way on policy. The same thing goes in the New Hampshire House, where what had been a Democratic majority will soon be a 25-seat Republican edge. And, all these changes do make it likely that if Republicans can remain united, and that is a big if, but if that's the case, Democrats will largely be on the sidelines when it comes to decision making in Concord over the next 2 years.
And we've been watching those numbers come into focus at the end of last week as the votes continue to be counted. And you've been asking folks from both parties, what happened? Why the Democratic success at the top of the ballot and then such a dramatic reversal in the state level races? And what have you been hearing?
Well, it certainly depends on who you're talking to, but I do think one thing that's important to bear in mind is that in a high turnout election like the one we saw last week, current district maps in New Hampshire, which were drawn by Republicans a decade ago, do favor Republicans. That's perhaps most dramatic in the state Senate and on the executive council. And, some of the seats in the Senate that the Democrats won 2 years ago when turnout overall was lower, and certainly Republican turnout was lower and Democratic enthusiasm was higher, were reclaimed by Republicans this year in a universally high turnout situation. I mean, we can look at one seat in particular, District 23, 2 years ago. John Morgan, a Democratic newcomer, beat incumbent Republican Bill Gannon. And as you remember, anger among Democrats over President Trump was quite high. That district includes one relatively large block of potential Democratic votes, Exeter, which turned out big 2 years ago. And, turnout in some of the outlying Republican-leaning towns in the district was a lot more slack. That wasn't the case this year. Both parties did get their base out to the polls, and Gannon won back his seat, and you can see similar dynamics at work in a handful of other districts in the state Senate, and that helped flip the Senate back to Republican control.
Is it just gerrymandered legislative districts, Josh, or are progressives seeing, a bigger failure here?
Well, there were certainly tactical differences between Democrats and Republicans this year. Republicans really tried to maintain traditional face-to-face campaigning throughout the COVID pandemic. They knocked on doors, they held public events, they dropped off campaign flyers, by hand and so on. Democrats really decided to rein that in consciously. They skipped a lot of in-person campaigning. I've been told that local candidates were essentially told by the state party with the backing of the Biden campaign, and there's a guidance document on this, to avoid in-person campaigning. That was certainly due to public health concerns around the pandemic. And, also, there's a performative aspect of this too. Democrats wanted to be seen as following public health guidance to try to draw a contrast with what Democrats saw as reckless campaign behavior of President Trump with the huge outdoor rallies and of Republicans in general. And, it seems that strategy could have worked fine for Joe Biden or Jeanne Shaheen, Democrats who, had no need to introduce themselves to voters in New Hampshire, who have money to go on TV to buy Facebook ads. But say you're a first-term state senator or, somebody running for state rep and largely anonymous to many people in your district, then, campaigning on the phone or on Zoom is not going to help you make an impression, particularly among voters not already predisposed to back Democrats. I've, heard variants of this from numerous people in the past few days that, their thinking is that Democrats did kind of hamstring themselves by discouraging down ballot candidates from hitting the streets and meeting directly voters. And, there's some messaging questions too. Where did the Democrats have a significantly progressive message once you got beyond, we must defeat Donald Trump, which was clearly a potent message.
Yeah. So the well-known candidates seemed to do well this year. The candidate who did best was Republican Governor Chris Sununu. Can we give him credit for, lifting his fellow Republicans in those lesser-known races?
It's hard to quantify exactly how much credit Governor Sununu deserves, but he is popular. He received an immense amount of votes last week, and the governor certainly did do a lot of campaigning in the flesh and via digital means, with Facebook ads and that sort of thing, to really work to lift lesser known Republicans to victory. And it's also true that Republicans in general did a better job this year in raising money for down ballot races. I'm thinking particularly in the House, and a lot of recent elections, Democrats have often had a big financial edge in these more low end races, due to more aggressive state party fundraising. And this year, House Republican leaders did try to blunt that advantage, and they paired that with messaging, accurate or not, that sought to portray all Democrats running for seats in Concord as basically income tax advocates. And that may have had an effect. Hard to say how much, but it's certainly something that I've heard from people on both sides of the aisle. The flip side of that is there are Democrats who told me that
I
Democratic Party
love this
messaging
conversation
was
right here.
insufficiently aggressive from the top, that rather than just being, we need to get Donald Trump out of the White House, there wasn't a lot for voters to grab onto, to get excited. It was essentially stop Trump, stop Sununu, and that the governor proved to be popular across the boards, and that message didn't translate down to Democratic gains at the bottom of the ballot.
Okay, now hold on. I gotta stop right there. So this is just absolutely imperative for the understanding. So important. They're really doing they're taking a moment to actually address some of these problems. Now, like, I don't know about Rick. I don't know how Josh feels about this. It's very coded, and I think that at the end of we'll get to it at the end. I think that it's the NHPR shows their cards a little bit right there, but I think it's the idea that the Republican Party actually put time and effort and money into supporting down ballot races. Like they had campaign format things, videos, slots, graphics where you could just kind of plug and switch out content. And that's what Josh is talking about right there. And that blunting of the money and that really, really just immensely affected the ultimate outcome of that down ballot race, right? There was no, and there are so many people that watch this show that will tell you, if you have a conversation with them, if you're not one of those people that ran for office, that they got zilch from the party. I mean, like nothing. And that's just how you lose. Like, period. That's absolutely how you lose. Now, if we're talking about the new Democratic leadership, it's, I think, this needs to be not, this isn't a talking point, right? Like I'm saying it right now, but the only reason I'm describing that this is a thing is because you need to talk about the follow-up thought, which is this isn't something we need to discuss. This is just something everybody needs to internalize, that if you have money and you have a party, that you take that money and you put it out to the whole party. There's absolutely no reason, given the prevalence of like open source, right, that I mean, look, like the way I make this show, for example, like the way I do so much of my stuff, there's a really easy way, if I want to completely disseminate it to other people and explain very quickly how to implement it. And the only thing that stands in their way is their ability, or, well, not their ability, excuse me, but their like desire to learn how to use that tool or not, or their time that they can dedicate to using that tool if they choose to, right? The Democratic Party could also just like pay to hire like a number of people, You know what I mean? Like you could just hire, you could pick districts and you can just say, okay, everybody inside this district, or grouping of districts, everybody inside this county, we have a team of graphic designers, videographers, marketers, whatever, people that will, organizers, folks that will help you to just kind of make everything happen. And so you've got these more centralized things. This is what a lot of the nonprofit organizations do. This is a lot of what like RAD or New Hampshire Youth Movement, like that's a lot of the type of work that organizations like this do. And the idea is that if you've got it centralized to the party, they have more weight. And so again, in 2020, what will ultimately be 2022 and 2024, this is just how you do this stuff now. Like I don't really understand where the confusion is. And the Republicans are just they just go. They just do it. There's no hesitation or anything like that. And the reason that there's crazy hesitation amongst Democrats ultimately is that they don't agree with the party is a fractured coalition. It's a coalition that's kind of lying to itself, if we're being honest, right? Like how the center really has absolutely nothing in common, and it's abundantly clear that nothing in common with the left, that is. And it's absolutely clear that they're fine with what's going on. They don't actually care. And they might as well just join the Republican Party. Really. Because what just happened? This is like, I don't believe, excuse me 1 second here. I don't believe that there's any willingness amongst the leadership of the party to actually listen to progressives. You know what I mean? Like, there's just not. They won't do it. We've got the Buckley Commission thing. It's like, where the hell is that thing? Yeah. This would be the moment to hop to this, right? Buckley's task force, which is just a load of nonsense. I mean, look, I'm glad that Manny's on it. I'm glad that Manny made it onto this, that he's there. At least there's somebody. But this is just silly. This is just real silly. And here I've got the actual... There we go. Sorry about that. Here we've got the actual members. Former House Speaker Terry Norelli. Just to quick point out, she blocked Jonah on Twitter. And we don't know why. So that's funny. This is just a slew of people that aren't going to listen to the most progressive part of the party. And the thing with this is that I don't know why we should, like, here's where we get in a real strategy. I genuinely think that progressives should just buck all the way Democrats. Like, look, y'all are shot in the foot for the next 2 years anyways. Screw them over. Just go Tea Party on the Democrats. I'm not even kidding. Like, that's if there was ever a time for us to be utterly brash and have, and I mean zero tolerance, it's a good time to do it. And the thing is, I think that spirit, right? If you strip away all of the ideological rhetoric, and if you just talk about the issues, if you're just talking about policy, like that kind of thing, and you just get vicious. I mean, get real vicious with it. Don't be afraid to like make somebody feel like, I don't know. It's my genuine opinion that like the Democratic leadership, they deserve to feel however bad they feel, if not worse, for what's happened in all this time and for their lack of self-awareness. And when it comes to a more like a less politically engaged, less frequent voter, you know, like maybe they turn out for the big elections, but like they don't go vote in local elections that often. Maybe they kind of like, because we live in America, they have certain ideas that just lean right on their own, but then they also have a moral compass that pushes them left, and they just don't spend time like sussing that out. That's just not an imperative in their life, right? I think that's actually a lot of the voters in New Hampshire, right? So you get them in front of a ballot, and they're gonna do things that look conservative. But if you go have a conversation with them, they're going to tell you things that sound progressive. And that there's a big disconnect for us on the left with that. And I think we need to spend a little bit more time understanding that and seeing that in every single way, the way Democrats, establishment Democrats in the state have tried to do this has always alienated that specific type of voter. Always. We've just always pushed them away. And that type of person will never learn from like the woke scolding, right? Like that's never going to work on them. That's never going to be effective. That putting them down like that is never going to be effective. You can do it to Republican politicians. That makes sense, right? Because you're doing it for demonstration purposes. You're trying to show people how god awful somebody's idea is, or maybe how god awful they are. I don't know. I'm also more, you know, I'm not a believer of monotheism, so I'm using God too much there. But at any rate, the thing is, I don't see smacking down your neighbor who's sick of all politics and who says or repeats conservative points. Like I don't see just like spanking them verbally as being effective in terms of changing their mind. Democratic leadership, on the other hand, this is their weapon of choice, which should show you that is also the most effective weapon against them. That's what they're most afraid of. That's the thing they're afraid would derail their career, right? Their political career, that congealing. So that's the place, right? In that space of Concord in the State House, that's where you really just rip them a new one. Like, you know, I think everybody should just be gutting Doug Lay all the time for his just like protect the vest close to the team. Like, get out of here, dude. Quit being a geezer about it. Jeez. That's some old school aristocrat shit. Like, I'm sorry. Like, is that who y'all want being in charge of you? Like, you know, like, that I don't know. I just, it's, that whole thing is kind of like inside baseball type stuff, and I just like, you gotta call that every single time, push away from it. You know what I mean? Like, it were tweets about what was it? Rennie Cushing. Considering a run. Hop up to that. That would be great. This would be cool. It's probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen at all because I just don't think there would be enough internal votes. I don't know, you know. Flip side, and like, here's a thought. Maybe it's time for us to have a new look at the districts that stayed blue, right? And examine how progressive that candidate is and see if it's worth getting a more progressive candidate in next time around. You know, that you have to do an analysis on. It's got to be real measured. It can't, that's not something you can just like jump way into. But I do genuinely think that maybe we could be taking that kind of a like Justice Democrats mentality to the state level, like the state house level, state rep level. There's a thought. There's a strategy thought. I would love to hear more about what other people are thinking on this. Big time. So I do have people that will be back on. I'm really curious to hear what Jonah thinks about this kind of stuff. And we'll just get deeper in on the what exactly do you do once you know all of the things that you know, right? I think there's a lot of established truths now, things that are just kind of like, well, that's how it is, and we know it, and that's what we're gonna live with. But we also, like, most of those conversations aren't actually about what do you do about it now. They're just like, we need to do this, you know, we need to, you know, fund our down ballot candidates. And it's like, well, yeah, no shit, Sherlock, like, could have told you that 4 cycles ago. Come on. Putting all your money into Donna Soucy's race. Give me a break. So, you know, look, we'll get there. But for, you know, I'm going to finish up soon here because I didn't want to go too long today. So what we'll do is we will just sort of finish up this, because this is good. We're getting to the end of it here. So we're going to finish up this this clip from NHBR.
Does that leave the New Hampshire Democratic Party? Is this going to be, you know, that the year of real soul searching, or what do you think is going to happen now?
Well, you know, certainly there are progressive elements within the Democratic Party's coalition that certainly hope it will be. People who feel that there needs to be more diversity among candidates and party leaders and in the policy priorities. And, you know, young people, some of them told me they felt shut out from decision making when it comes to the party's platform and candidate grooming, that sort of thing. I mean, Ray Buckley's been chairman of the party for a long time, and he does seem to get this. He's promised what he's termed an autopsy of last week's results and a plan on how to respond. But, you know, the entire federal delegation and Joe Biden did win New Hampshire by decent margins. That's no small thing. And, you know, Ray Buckley himself remains plenty respected and, you know, also feared within his party. I'm not aware of any candidate actively seeking to challenge him at this point. And, you know, you really don't get the sense, at least now, that the local Democratic donor class sees any need for the party to make a hard pivot. But, it's also true in this political moment. Party leaders maybe need to be careful about being too cavalier when progressive, younger, more diverse Democrats seek change. Being too cavalier could be risky. We've seen that dynamic play out across the country over the past few years. It hasn't come to Democratic politics in New Hampshire, at least not yet. But, there are some party activists who think that maybe do. And, last week's state house results, the down ballot results in particular, could spur it.
Okay, so this is sort of the right place to end. So, look, anybody, I mean, I don't necessarily like. I mean, it depends on what kind of stuff you're into. I'm a art school student, so I've got my own experiences or whatever. But look, if anybody's seen the movie Antichrist, Buckley trying to do that autopsy is like Willem Dafoe trying to do psychological treatment on Charlie Gainsbourg in that movie. It's gonna be nightmarish. And I do mean nightmarish. So that's not who should do that work. He just needs to go home and he needs to delete his Twitter account. I don't care how feared he is. I really don't. Because he can't do a thing to me. I'm not running for office. And I want to be out here normalizing, telling that guy to get off the internet and out of politics in this state. It is time to step down, homie. You had a good run. You did some good stuff on the national level. But you've boned us in the state. We're screwed. We're totally screwed now. Like the amount of unraveling that the progressive left in this state has to do, the amount of wire untangling that we're tasked with at this point is just absurd. And we should never, ever, ever let the Democratic establishment forget how much work they put on our shoulders because of this. So that's one part of it, right? He talks about, you don't really get the sense, at least now, that the local Democratic donor class sees any need for the party to make a hard pivot. And that's true. And why is that true? Because they're Republicans. They're not actually Democrats. I hate talking about it, but the Overton window has moved so far to the right here that we can't even conceive of the fact that we give absolutely zero space in the room to even talk about left issues. Now, why is that evident? Because Josh Rogers, despite the fact that multiple states passed legalization of marijuana, that multiple states raised their minimum wage, he's out here saying that it's risky to be cavalier when trying to appeal to younger, more progressive, diverse Democrats who seek change. He's saying it's risky to do that, right? And we know because we've seen that dynamic play out. Well, what dynamic is he talking about? I'm dead serious. I really want to understand exactly what Josh is talking about right there, because this just seems to be more of New Hampshire centrist brain just getting stuck in people who have lived here too long. And like, I'm not even mad at Josh. Like, look, it's okay. His job is to be unbiased. And like, there's a certain, like, that is a bias of itself when you're inside the bubble that is New Hampshire. And you got to remember how damn conservative this whole fucking place is. So it's like, I get it. I get why he's saying what he's saying. But at the same time, dude, like, give me a break. Like, the policy itself, like, you haven't seen it come to New Hampshire. Like, dude, have you seen the New Hampshire youth movement? Did you watch the debate with Volinsky just like trouncing Feltus? Like, come on, man. The point gap between him and Feltus this time around, if you're going to compare it to like the Kelly Marchand race, like, get out of here. Progressive policy is totally palatable to people in New Hampshire. It's 100% palatable. And I think all you got to do to do that, all you got to do to get that progressive policy into the minds and the hearts of New Hampshire voters is to just gank Republicans' talking points, because you can make every single one of the arguments for progressive policy that they make for their austerity. It's really easy, and I encourage people to try and take some like mental flexibility moments with it and like reconsider, like, okay, like, pick a Republican argument up out of the heap and say, how can I twist this? How can I manipulate this argument to actually advocate for the progressive equivalent? And I think that's some strategy that we really need to get into. And I want to like talk with folks and play that out long term over the next few months and over the next 2 years, because I think that's going to be, if we can create consistent centralization of that type of information that we can spread easily and cheaply, if not free. I mean, all these videos are up indefinitely for nothing for the public. That's part of the whole model that I'm trying to operate on. So I would very much so say that I'm looking forward to having those conversations here, and I'm looking forward to those resources being available. I think some of those conversations have happened already in some of the interviews that happened over the summer. So I would, wrapping up now a little bit, but I would sort of take this moment to, just say, go back through our YouTube channel, listen to some of those interviews, catch up on some of that content, because we get into it. We get into specifically how it plays out. And yeah, there are a lot of case examples and we're being very specific, but it's important to take those specifics and learn how to abstract whatever that issue is, and learn how to see what all of the different variables are. And then from there, apply those variables or different variables to that situation, see if it works or not, right? That's how it's just, you got to compare notes. We just got to do that. So that's where it's at. Become a patron. Please support this channel. Follow us on Twitter. Like us on Facebook. You can subscribe. Hit the bell for the notifications. Cheers, everybody. This definitely ran a little bit longer than I normally would have meant, but it's chill. It's chill. We're hanging. Love everybody. I do. Just, be compassionate with people. Be ruthless with power, as Michael Brooks says. And that's the thought I think I'm going to leave everybody with today. So, cheers. Catch y'all next week. And enjoy.